town is doing what we can to try to get that site redeveloped. We don't own it. We've done things in the past that try to help move it towards someone taking ownership of it. This is just another step in that direction. Our hope is that if sewer does go in, that will really move the marketability of that site to get it cleaned up and get something else built in it. Many of you will remember a couple years ago we rezoned that property. It went through town meeting. It was once zoned industrial because of the mill. It got changed to village commercial. So we're just trying to help move that along. As I'm still new, I don't have my cards yet, but at the end, if you all have questions that you think of after this meeting, I'll give you my cards, or actually my admin's cards, but he'll get it to me, and then we'll make sure those questions, anything you have after this will get answered. It's our goal. We're gonna be meeting again in 2 weeks over at the Housing Authority over on West Main Street. And part of that will be answering any of the questions that don't get answered here today. Again, if we have questions here, we'll be recording them. If we can't answer it, we'll find out the best we can for you. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve with Weston and Sampson.
Thank you, Paul. So as Paul said, my name is Steve Peterson. I'm with Weston and Sampson Engineers. We work with the Water and Sewer Commission as their consultants. So I have Anna with me here. She's going to advance the slides for me. And we also have members from the commission here that can help with some of the questions and answers. So I think Paul laid it out pretty well. We're going to start, just give you an overview of the project, the extent of it. It's pretty basic. It's Elm Street and Miller Terrace. We'll give you a little bit of the background, a little bit more about what Paul was talking about, how we got to where we are now, and where we're going from here. And everything is ultimately driven by the cost of the project and how those costs are going to be recovered, how is the project going to be paid for. And then we'll give you some updates on the design status and the next steps, where things are headed from here. Let's go to the next slide. So that's the same figure that's over here. Basically, the extent of the project is about 4,800 feet of 8-inch gravity sewer. It's the entire length of Elm Street between Reservoir and East Main, and it also includes Miller Terrace. The sewer fronts about 50 properties along the way. It also includes one municipal wastewater pump station, so all the flow is collected by gravity on one low point, which is down near the intersection of Miller Terrace and Elm Street. The current site, we've been looking at several sites, and the one that we're looking closely at now is actually on the library property at Library Park, in that area there. Project also includes 4,500 linear feet of water main improvements. These improvements have been on the list for some time to get done, and it would happen simultaneously. And one of the big benefits, the economy of scale of doing the both of those does save costs as opposed to trying to do these two significant infrastructure projects at different times. It would disrupt the road twice. You'd have to pay significant paving costs 2 times. So there is a little bit of economy of scale by doing both projects. So that's this scope. That's what we're talking about in terms of the project. So Paul alluded to this. Why? How did we get to this point? The biggest thing that's driving this project is grants. A couple of years ago, when Paul was here previously, before he left, Paul was instrumental in getting a MassWorks grant for the design of the project. The town also secured an additional grant through Economic Development Bill. The entire cost of the design was funded through grant monies. So it gave the town the opportunity to find out what it would take to get this built. And then during the design, we also reached out, the town again applied for a construction grant and received $3.5 million through MassWorks, the same program that provided a significant chunk of the design monies, awarded $3.5 million. And there are timeframes on both of these grants. that we'll talk about in the slides. And, as Paul said, the catalyst for the grant monies, for these grant programs, they are about, jobs and housing. So the potential redevelopment of 47 Elm Street was the catalyst to get the grant monies. That's why we have these monies to, I guess, defray the cost of the overall project. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on the property at 47 Elm. There's a history there. We can certainly answer any questions of that. I'm going to assume a lot of you know a lot of the history out there or see it quite frequently. So the town has been working, initially to just make this, property secure and safe, but ultimately to find a way to get it developed and a viable part of the community, viable part of the tax base. And that goes back to right into the master plan itself. This property is a priority economic target area. It's one of the main properties in town that the town is targeting to get cleaned up and ultimately improved. And also as part of the master plan, it was identified that infrastructure investments are critical to promote the economic development. So projects just like this, it was clear that the ability to do anything at this property was limited by the infrastructure that was available, the utilities. Just go back. So Devco North America is pursuing ownership. The latest plan is somewhere between 140, 150 apartments and 10,000 square feet of commercial space. They have a significant amount of remediation work to do out there. And those are the things that the potential buyers are weighing as to whether they're going to move forward with that property. And obviously the infrastructure improvements are important to them, and they're necessary if they want to redevelop this to its full potential. So the cost of the project, the water main work is somewhere in the range of 2 to 2.4 million. The sewer works between 5.3 and 6 million. So the total cost of the project is between 7.3 million and 8.4 million. That's where we're at right now based on the information we have, the data that we have, that's where the cost will be somewhere in that range. So if you go to the next slide. So just working from the total numbers there, right off the bat we have the $3.5 million MassWorks grant, which takes a significant chunk of the money out of there. The water work, because the water is in place, it's existing infrastructure. This is improvements to the overall water system for the whole town, predominant majority of which is on water. So the water work will be covered through the water rates, the rates that people pay to use the water system. And if we take those and we do the simple math, that would leave between 1.8 million and 2.5 million of money remaining to be paid for, and associated basically with the sewer work, and looking at using betterment assessments, which is the way the last project was done in Norton, and sewer projects are typically done. So the way the betterments work is that you look at how many what they call equivalent dwelling units there are. Basically, an equivalent dwelling unit is a single family home. So every single family home is one betterment unit. So there's, I said there were 50 properties. They're not all single family properties. So there's some properties that, the 2-family homes or the apartment complex. So there's a total of about 64 EDUs along this corridor, not including the property at 47 Elm Street, which also has to be assessed. So if we look at the proposed development at 47 Elm Street, that equates to between 145 to 155 EDUs. So that's a big chunk of the betterment costs that need to be recovered.
What's an EDU?
So an equivalent dwelling unit. So it's basically a single family home. So any property that isn't just a single family home like a two-family home would be 2 EDUs. There'll be 2 equivalent dwelling units. Okay? And any questions? Yeah, we use acronyms a lot, so if there's anything that doesn't make sense, feel free to ask. So just by running the numbers here, so again, with a range of 145 to 155 EDUs for that property at 47 Elm Street, if you just take the total remaining costs and divide the low end and the high end by the number of units, the betterment assessment would be somewhere between $8,600 and $12,000 to cover the remaining cost of the project. I guess to put, with betterments, they can be paid in full upfront, or they can be assessed over 20 years on your taxes if you don't pay it upfront. If you choose to just leave it that way. So if you look at that range, the 8.6 to 12, on the lower end, that's about $690 a year. The higher end is like $960 a year on your betterment assessment. Yes?
Now, if you could clarify, an earlier presentation made the assumption that the new development wouldn't have to pay their share of the betterments.
Yeah.
It looks now like you're assuming they will pay?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay,
so it's been evolving. So when we met with the select board, we were talking about it, because one of the concerns that we're grappling with is, so right now when you assess that betterment, because that's going to be over $1 million, right? 145 to 155 units is somewhere around $1.3, $1.5 million in assessment. And how does that, attaching that to this property also obviously affects the people that are looking at buying it. But it's, the value of what they're getting has been determined to be well worth.
And I might be ahead of the game asking the question, but if the assumption is they would pay their fair share, so to speak, and they walk away from the project, and we've all committed to the project, do we have to eat the share that we assume they would pay?
The answer is no. So, yeah, that wouldn't work. And maybe, so I've talked with Mike about this. I mean, basically, the town would have to take on, it would get attached to the property eventually. Right, Mike, can you explain that better? I mean,
So, if we don't have a developer lined up when the project is completed, we have to stop paying the note. So the town, that 1.8 million to 2.5 million share, the town would have to start paying that note off. It wouldn't be assessed to the homeowners along the way. It would be
so
town.
Right, 47 Elms share
Right.
of this, which
Right.
is,
Would be paid by the town, would lien the property, so when someone does come forward, would get that money back.
In the background, we develop
Okay, good.
So
yep,
I just want to clarify once again, because one of my questions was, well, when will payment be due?
yep,
And you said either upfront or spread over 20 years?
yep, I can explain that. Yeah, so when the project is complete and the sewers are approved for use, letters go out to everybody that has the ability to tie in, and it says the sewers are now available, and you would get assessed your betterment at that time. You would get a note saying, here's your assessment of, let's take the middle ground, $11,000. And I think you have 30 days to pay it in full, or it gets assessed, or it just goes on to your taxes, and then it gets assessed over 20 years on
And
your
then
taxes.
if it gets assessed in 20 years, there's interest to be paid?
There is
on that?
interest, yeah.
Okay, what will be?
So the betterment laws say you have to charge 5% or 2% or up to 2% higher than the rate that you bonded at. And rates are high right now. So we've used 5% for the calcs I just gave you, and I said 690 to 960. So 5 would be the highest percent that the town would assess. If they get the
Over-
bonding
for
at
5 years.
4%, they
For
can
5
charge
years.
What's that?
Not for 20 years. Let's say
For 20.
if the rates change in 15, 20 years, whatever, it's still 5%?
It's locked in, yeah, once
It's locked in?
It's locked in, yeah, it's not variable.
Excuse me. It's Ray. I'm sorry.
Did you want,
That's the maximum we can charge is 5%. We can't charge any more, it could be less, but the maximum is 5, correct? By the law.
so the maximum you're gonna charge is 5. So if if you bond it at 6%, by the betterment laws, you could charge up to 2% more than that. But the town's committed to no higher than the 5%. So the betterment laws are kind of tricky in that way, but.
No, because, I'm getting old and I'm about to, looking to retire, and I'm not looking for mortgages, but, you know what I'm saying? You guys gonna force that on us.
And does a person have to, if everything's fine and we don't need it, do we have to do it if we live on Elm Street?
So the betterments are gonna get assessed to everyone.
So everybody has to do it?
Everyone gets assessed a betterment.
And that's just the betterment fee, that's not the actual tie-in. We have to pay that way above and beyond, however much that's gonna cost.
You have to hire someone to
So
connect
this
you.
isn't even the whole connection?
No,
It's just a connection to the,
building.
yeah. It's 10 feet, right? It's probably 10 feet coming out of the thing into your property, whatever it is?
It's extended to the property line, yeah.
No,
you-
so we go to the property of the town, right?
Yep,
That's-
so yeah, there's a stub left
So
in
you guys
every
will
property.
stop it into our
Yeah, we come
property.
off the street and
Yeah.
onto the every property, and then
And then the homeowner has to do whatever.
has to connect at that point. Yep,
And if he needs a pump system, he has to put up with that too and all that, right?
correct. But this is a gravity-fed system, so as long as the homes aren't,
So we-
below grade
in this
level, I
case,
don't.
we do not need a pump?
You should not need a pump, no, it's a gravity system in the street, you should be able to flow by gravity into it. Again, I just want to be clear, I don't know offhand if there are any homes that drop off below the road. I'm pretty sure everybody's at road level, and there's not a significant drop off right there.
How deep is the water? Just curious.
Yeah.
How deep is the water line and the sewer line on Elm Street? What's from
So the
the
existing-
asphalt down, how far is that down?
They're typically like
6
5 to
feet.
6 feet to the top of the water main,
5 feet.
and
5 feet?
5 feet. And sewer, the target depth of sewer is about 8 feet to make sure that we're below all the other utilities. But it is controlled by the contours of the land.
Yeah.
We can't, water can go up and down, the gravity sewer our stuff has to flow from higher ground to lower ground, let's
Correct.
just say. Did you have something to do?
Yeah, I didn't hear your question all the way, so I thought the question was, did we tie in fees? So you have to pay for the cost of the contractor to tie you into the system, but other than the betterment, there is not a tie-in fee assessed to your property from the town.
So-
Do you know
So
how
this-
much that usually it is to actually connect?
We got quotes, it's about $7,000 on average. And we got quotes that a septic system is in the 20 to 30. If you had to replace your septic system, it's 20 to 30,000 if you had to replace your system. Yes.
Yeah, 2 quick questions. As far as tying in, I know there was discussion about it being mandatory to tie in. So I pay the betterment, and even if I didn't want to tie in, there's a window of time where I'm mandated to pay that
7 years.
$7,000 costs to tie into
So you have
it?
7 years to tie in.
Okay, so that still stands. Okay, one other comment, and then I'll shut up. And you're looking for input. This is my input. Paul, in the beginning, referenced, this is kind of a project that benefits, it addresses the street needs and the plant needs. But then there was a lot of reference to the town. And from my perspective, this benefits the town a great deal. It's not just an eyesore, it's a public safety issue. And we've gone back and forth for a few years about the town doesn't own it. And I've always had the belief that the town might not own it, but the town is not totally innocent if some major catastrophe happened there. So from my perspective, the town is alleviating a public safety concern, and the whole town benefits from that. So what I'm leading to is I don't necessarily agree that just the people on Elm Street and the developer or the town, for that chunk of it, should bear the brunt of it. You know, I would like to see there is a town benefit, and I would like to see it spread across the town. That's my 2 cents.
Right, I mean, we've all been living in that toxic environment for many years, a lot of us. It just seems unfair that if our water and septic has been fine all these years, why should we have to pay to have this done when it's not a necessity, it's just to get rid of Reed environment? It just seems like, as Steve said, more of a town issue than us. We don't need it ourselves, we're not looking for it. So, and the ones of us who have private wells, even down near, close to Miller Terrace, we have contamination in ours that we have to get remediated ourselves, that we've been paying for month after month. So, I would go with the whole town, the town issue. It's not just Elm Street that should take care of the whole town.
Understood. I mean, it's following the typical way that a project like this is done, you know, because the words may not hit home with you, but it is, your property is bettered by having these utilities in front. That's the whole concept of the betterment. So the properties that get this infrastructure are, you know, bettered. I totally understand where you're coming from, but, you know, it does increase the value of the property. There's data, you know, and I don't have exact numbers, but when you sell the property being on sewer versus a private system, also, you know, I know that, you know, the soils, you know, the ground isn't ideal out there, so there will be issues, you know, at the time of sale, whether your systems will be passing or not. So that's where the benefit comes. I mean, I get your question about the dollars, but that's the reason it's done the way it is because you do get something that not the whole town gets. You know, the people, you know, most of the people in town don't have a sewer to tie in. They don't, you know, if their system fails, they don't have that option. It's just, they have to, you know, they have to pay the cost to replace their system.
They don't get Reed
I totally understand that. I totally understand.
But what about the water pipes too? We don't have to, it's just people using that water with the water rates, that's how that's getting paid for?
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
We don't have to tie into that, right? I don't want to tie into that.
You will be tied in. I mean, you're already tied into water, or you're on a well?
Yeah, I'm on a well.
I would defer to the water. If you're on a well,
There's no mandate to tie in.
there's no mandate.
Okay. Good.
Yes.
If there's no mandate to tie into town water, how do they regulate how much waste is getting out into the system?
There's a
Oh,
water
how they
meter-
build it?
Yep, there's a water meter that will be installed in the home to register the amount of sewer flow going through the home. In houses that have a well, we work pretty tightly with the plumber to make sure that outside faucets and things like that are not calculated by that water meter, because we know that's an unfair assessment. So strategic placement of the water meter would capture the usage of, you know, basically all the other items, you know, the showers, the sinks, dishwashers, tubs, things like that.
And I can assume that's on the homeowner too to pay for that?
There is a cost to install that meter, correct?
Okay. Is this project a done deal? Like, is this,
No, there's a town meeting vote. The town has not voted to fund it.
okay.
So this is, it.
Has the town, and can someone from the town let me know if you've ever considered just hooking up this factory and leaving the homeowners on their own?
I mean, that's,
I mean, it's just
so
such.
you're gonna come down the whole, so you need the whole road, the water, the whole way.
Take the whole road,
So you
take
gotta-
the whole road,
Yeah.
take
so
the
you're
whole
gonna-
road and hook up the factory. Because everyone agrees the factory is a problem.
Yeah.
Hook up the factory. hook up the factory, run it down Elm Street, tear up the road, make your repairs, repave it, and hopefully this company that you flashed on the screen will come in and put 200 housing units there. That'd be great. Everyone knows we need it.
And don't sewer anybody else along the way. Run the pipe, but don't provide sewer for anybody else.
No, don't mandate it. You wanna run by the pipes, you have to stub it anyway. So the
Well, not if we
reality,
just do a force main. If we don't run the gravity sewer down the road.
no, you have to put the gravity sewer in anyway, all the way down the street, and you have to put the domestic water in as well. What I'm saying, what I'm saying is that the forcing mandate tie-in, if the property is sold, it's part of the sale of the property, they could start in, but not, you've got people here that are, you know, a year or two away from retirement, or have retired, and you know, we're looking at a $20,000 tie-in fee between the betterment tax and the tie-in for a contractor to come in and do that. If it's on a portion of the partial of the sale, it's not a big issue, because it's part of the sale, but to force people to do that now, along with dealing with the water, and I'm sure that everybody just got their quality water test on the Northern Water. You guys like it clear, or brown, or chocolate, what color you guys like it? And they want us to tie into that? Most people's wells are better off than that. And I ain't even got to my question, which is basically, you're looking at the property next door, which has about 22 acres, little waterfront property, water feature. You're gonna put 156 EDUs on those property to get that rate.
Yep.
Yeah, the only way to do that on 22 acres is to have what you got across the street from McDonald's. To get that kind of property tax. So what you're talking about, a complex similar to that design, well, how do you get 156 units to get the betterment cost where you need it to be, to tie into it and come up to pay offset that cost? I only see 22 acres there, unless you got more land that we don't know about.
Yeah, I mean, it's multifamily housing. I mean, it's a.
And I agree, so to get that, you'd have to put a complex in the size of what you have,
I
that's
don't
the.
know which, maybe it is, I don't know what.
So in other words, it's nice to
I don't know how
have,
many units the property
it's
is.
nice to have an open-ended design, and then once it's in, then say, okay, we put the road in, we have now a betterment, we've now increased the value of the property, so now that the developer can come in and deal with it, and then they have to decide what they're gonna do with it, to get by the town.
Yeah.
And the town's approach is gonna be, basically, what we need to do is maximize our value for that property, and so let's get as many housing units on it as possible. What happened to residential housing? It's more of a mixed-use housing at this point. It just changes the whole feel of the street. So, just an observation at this point, we've seen this presentation,
Yep.
so.
Yes.
I guess I'm naive, but I see this as a gift to whoever gets to develop from the old mill.
Yeah.
And we've had so much change in the 50 years that I've lived at the end of Miller Terrace. I didn't know the place. There was no library, there was no police station, there was no public works garage. We thought we were buying a place sort of protected in the country. We could walk to the post office, we could walk to the grocery store. Look at it now, and now I can hardly walk. And at night, the light pollution from this new town monster they're building, you can't see the stars. That's just my word.
Yeah.
So, do you have an estimate on what the new sewer bill is gonna be?
Yep, so based on current water use out there, it was about $100 a quarter, so $400 a year.
And the water bill's gonna increase as well?
No,
No?
not necessarily, unless they change the rates. I mean, the rates are,
Not because of this project, though?
right.
Okay.
So when you say you're fixing the water, is that only for Elm Street or the town? Because you mentioned something would be a new updated water.
So it's gonna be a replacement all the way from Reservoir to East Main. So it benefits the whole town, that's why
Benefits
that's
the whole
being,
town.
so all of the costs associated with the water main are being paid through water rates.
And obviously, you know, if you guys build whatever you're gonna be building, that old factory, all those taxes comes into the town, benefits the whole town,
Benefits,
benefits the town, so benefits everybody in the town.
Yeah.
The town still is paying for that.
And also, you get that many apartments, you're gonna have more children, you're gonna have to do something with your schools.
I've lived on Elm Street for 55 years, and I think this sounds like a catastrophe in the making. I think to move in these people, just to have them pay for a water main, or a sewer, rather, is, it's putting the cart before the horse. You have it backwards, and we have too many people in town already. It's 6 times the size it was, or excuse me, 3 times the size it was when I first lived here. And I think if it's not too early, I think we should think about putting something like a museum there. Bristol County has the 3rd largest ethnicity in Bristol County is Portuguese. And I think this would be I'm not Portuguese myself, but I think this would be an ideal place for maybe a museum of Portuguese culture. You've got Cape Verdeans, you've got people from Brazil. Brazil's a very important country, and I think you should put a museum there, or something that isn't more people. It's not gonna do anything for the street. Yes, okay, they'll help pay the bills, but you know, this means that we're also going to have, as I think was said, we're going to have the need for more services. You know, it's just it's a vicious cycle. You add more people because you want a higher tax base. Okay, I sympathize, but then you need more services, and it's just and what is it going to do to the street? It's just going to be an eyesore. Which reminds me that I have to paint the front of my house better. But anyway, you get the idea.
I have a question. Why did the town had an interesting proposal about 2 years back where they were deciding they were going to possibly put the town hall and the senior center there, which would have made this time kind of interesting. It would not have increased much of the traffic flow because you'd only be dealing with traffic during the business hours. By trying to get 155, 160 units on Elm Street, and you make a good point about the traffic flow, you are changing the use and dynamics of this road. It went from a residential area to a high traffic mixed area, and I'm sure people that on Elm Street pick up trash off their front yards because it's a cutoff street between one section of town and the other. And usually when I put the trash on, I usually have to grab the stuff off the front yard because it's too far to actually wait till I get to the location. They just throw it out the window and I pick it up and put it in my trash can, because if we don't, it's amazing how litter attracts more litter. It's very quick out there, how it works out. They just say, oh, this is an official dumping ground on Elm Street, so let me just add to the pile. So I'm rambling a little bit, but the reality is, I see the benefits, and I do see why it's a good idea. Trying to force the residents who've been in that town for a long time to have an end use of 7 years, when it could be saying, you want tie-in? Tie-in. I think my drinking water is probably a heck of a lot better than the town's drinking water. The other question is, the tie-in, when you tie in the water and you tie in the sewer. In some cases, the town usually wants you to cap that well. It's like, why would I take care of something take out something I already paid for? Matter of fact, I just had to replace the well because they only asked about, 10, 12 years. So the well had to go.
Drinking water well?
Yeah. But my well goes down 400 feet, so it's not like it's, I don't have to worry about, I know what I'm getting out of it. And I have it tested, and I've run through filters and stuff, but I see the stuff when I go to the health office, and I see, not the health office, the doctor's office up here on 140, and they asked for drinking water there, and it's brown. I said, you guys paying for that? It's an old system. You got old piping. Only a very small portion of the town has been replaced with the newer PVC piping, the SCR 35 stuff. So the reality is you're dealing with a very old community. So a lot of battles to pick on to say, let's have Elm Street take care of it all. And I understand why you're doing it. I understand that you wanna make the carrot as big as you possibly can. But I think the residents of this town and the residents of the street would like a little more input as to what goes in there in the final analysis. If you're gonna have an apartment complex right in the middle of a residential area, it does change the dynamics of the town to get your numbers up. Am I wrong?
I've been here 72 years. I've gone from seeing it be a busy factory with 200 or 300 people working there
Yeah.
to nothing or whatever. And
Yeah.
this isn't the way to go. It really isn't. And not only that, this should have been cleaned up about 15 years ago with the water problem. That's been a problem for that long.
Yeah.
And it's always said, you know, oh, it's, you know, the filtration system, that's gonna cure it. It's been the pipes forever. And everybody knows it, but, you know, ignores it. So that's not that's not the Elm Street problem, that's the town problem.
Yeah.
And so now you're telling us to pay for the whole thing and for a mistake that the town has made by not keeping up with it, and then they should be sharing in the cost of it.
This is, it's backwards, and it's backwards this way. Whatever happens with that property, whether it's housing or some people mentioned some other ideas for it, that's fine. And the residents of Elm Street, whoever's affected in Miller Terrace, aren't looking for anything for free, but it should be the factory should be driving the conversation. And I understand, they need sewer, they need massive amounts of water for anything that's gonna go in there. Do it, and say, hey, Elm Street residents, we're coming down your street. Would you like it? Would you not like it? We're gonna rip up your street for 16 months. I get it, it's part of doing business. Would you like our water? Would you like our sewer? What do you say? And if half the people say, great, I'd love it, let them do it. If the other half say,
We've been paying
I'm
for
gonna
black
pass,
water.
exactly, you brought up a perfect point, you've maintained your well, right? And you've maintained your septic,
Mhm.
right? So, he's done all the right things, he's maintained the functions of his residence. And now you,
We've been dealing with a bad water for
Yeah.
8 to 10 years.
Yeah.
And it's not just a little bad. I can show you the tanks in my house and you see that they're black from the water. And that's not a personal problem, and it's not any of ours, that's a town problem. And now you're asking us, the people on Elm Street, to bear the cost of it because it's that part of town. If it was anywhere else, I would expect it if it's a
Just
town
to-
issue.
And I understand everything you're saying. So the water main is being paid by the town, right? The water main is being paid by all the residents of the town
Right.
through the water rates, and nobody that's not tied in has to tie in.
No, right now, yeah. Right, this, on this.
If you're on a well, and you can stay on a well, that's what Frank said. So I think that the real costs to the Elm Street people are the sewer piece of it.
Sure.
And I'm trying to understand, I'm getting the sense it's you're probably not happy about any of it, but it's the having to tie, so there's the betterment, and then there's the having to tie. So if we come through, so what I'm hearing from you is we can come through and build it, assess the betterments, but don't require us to tie in.
Right, I mean, I understand it's a key feature down the road. You put the stub in, it's ready to tie in, you wanna tie in, your system fails, you go to have it checked out, your property doesn't pass, Title V, you've got options.
It's nice to have, and it's not a utility that any community does that way,
I get
the
it.
cost
I
of
get
putting it in, you don't build it in case you need it. you know?
that's why it's backwards. That's why it's backwards.
Okay,
You're-
how come?
That's why,
you're-
because
That's
It's
exactly
a
what I'm
gift
saying.
for the factory, like.
it's
Well,
for the
you just
factory.
mentioned something.
That's driving the conversation. I would feel the same way if I'm gonna throw out Jones Scott Boulevard.
Yeah, okay.
If there was a massive building on Jones Scott Boulevard and this whole place was filled with residents from that area, in that street that was affected, I feel the exact same way, even though I live on Elm Street. I would feel the exact same way. Why are you making them do it? Why are you making them do it? Because there's an old complex on their part of town that, look, we all wanna move forward with this site.
They're stuck with 22 acres, they can't move, and they have to make sure, they have to sweeten the deal.
Right, so, okay, so if they're gonna assess it, and
But it's
whoever
at
comes
our
into town's gonna
cost.
buy that property, and then they're gonna pay their fair share through the 160 housing units or whatever.
I mean, if
Just
you're
do
gonna
it.
open the ground, you might as well put in cable and electricity and all of it. You're opening up the road. The road was just paved, what, 3 years ago, 4 years ago? So now we're opening the road up again to put all these utilities in, which are fantastic. And they do make that carrot nice and big for the 22 acres. My issue is you're forcing the residents, you have to tie in, because we don't quite have enough money for all of it. So what we're gonna do is, we're gonna give you guys a stopwatch, and after 7 years, we're gonna want 20 grand from you guys. We want the betterment tax to come in at 6.8 to 12,000, and plus, if you pay the betterment, why are you gonna pay the betterment if you're not gonna tie into it? Okay, there's another 7 grand, so now we're up to 20 grand to tie into a system, because you guys said, well, we didn't quite have enough money for everything. So the reality is, instead of going back to the 156 units on 22 acres, and saying, let's charge that as part of the unit cost, you're gonna get it from the town people on that street. I'm just saying, it's a good first draft. It's a great idea. I just need to see the numbers more, and I need to see, I really don't want a large apartment complex kind of replacing the eyesore we got now. I could see the town hall, I could see the other property that was going in there. I could see it's a water signature property. That could all be cleared out. You've got to use it. It could be a park. It could be anything, but what you need to do to pay for it, unfortunately. The park's not going to pay for all those utilities. I just see it. It's just, this is why you have meetings. To get everyone's idea.
That's why we're here, yeah.
That's why we're here.
And we appreciate the turnout.
Right, I'm not attacking, I'm just saying, this is these are the issues I see.
On the issue of tying in, being forced to tie in, that's a town bylaw. So that's not something that the town is saying, forcing you to do it through the bylaw. It's not the water department saying, hey, we're just gonna make you do that.
Right.
That's, if the sewer goes in, you've got 7 years.
Yeah, I had this before.
It had changed a couple years ago, there was a town meeting and that had changed from 5 years to 7.
So, yeah, where I move, I get to tie in, so.
Unfortunately, your idea of putting it in and just saying, you know what, if you don't want to tie in, it's fine, it's cool, don't worry about it. The town can't do that unless the law will change.
Gotcha. And thank you for explaining that. Yeah.
I know we have some questions over here, yep.
I mean, regardless, 47, they're gonna do something at some point.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a commercial, profit-making type thing, so we're essentially paying $11,000 or $7,000 a piece to tie in, to create this.
That's not the tie-in, that's for the betterment only.
Yeah,
The
we're paying
tie-in's another
that
7 or 8
betterment
grand.
fee for a profit company.
Right, so you're paying, your town.
And
so-
if it has to
20
be put
grand.
in to sell it, put it on them. We can pay our tie-in, we can pay our connection, but we shouldn't have to pay for the betterment that's forcing that pipe up the line for a profit company.
Right.
If it was a non-profit, maybe, but it's a for-profit company. They can charge an extra $100 for each apartment, $1,000 for each apartment, and pay for that.
Well said.
Why should we?
What if it only went, which way, I'm not being funny, which way does this liquid flow? Like towards the center of town? What if this sewer pipe didn't go the whole length of Elm Street? It just went from the factory from point A to point B, a special project just for that property, like, I mean, how come the town
Well,
can't?
you're still screwing half the streets still gonna get hit.
No, I'm not able to tie in, I'm just saying, like, just one straight line.
It has to get to that area to tie in.
Yeah, I know, I understand, just bang, bang, it's just like,
You're talking about dedicated private
yeah, it's a
line.
dedicated private line, the factory is the problem, dedicated line, boom, nobody on Elm Street gets sewer.
Well, the problem is that dedicated line is put in by the town, and the town pays for it, it's a sewer line the town paid for.
Well, the town is paying for it, you're looking at the taxpayers on Elm Street that are gonna pay for it.
I know, I'm just telling you, the law states that it puts it in the same position.
It's a
The
dedicated.
bylaw would have to change to put a sewer line in and not have people tie in within the 7 years.
I understand why they do it, though, and as I said,
No,
I
I get
experienced
it,
it before.
I get it too.
I understand it as well.
Yes,
So this is gonna be voted on at town meeting,
Correct.
is that correct?
Correct.
What's the date of the town meeting?
Is it May 13th, 15th?
Yes.
Which is it?
13th, sorry.
13th.
May
So Monday, May 13th.
Monday, May 13th, and so anyone who shows up to that meeting is gonna vote
Yes.
on whether it's up or down. May 13th?
Yes, Monday.
So,
What time, please?
I believe it's at 7 p.m.
so whole town meeting or people on M Street?
It's the whole town.
The whole town.
The whole-
But only Elm Street pays for this part. The whole town gets to vote. That's what you're saying?
You're all gonna think it's good,
Just-
go for it.
Just on that, you know, you're saying that only Elm Street has to pay. Other people in town have tied into sewer or have had sewer go by their properties too. People on West Main Street. And if you look at the betterments versus the remaining share, the betterments of 550,000 to 768,000, the remaining share is 1.8 to 2.5. So the remaining share is a lot larger than the betterment, so the town is paying a share of this. And the other way to look at it, I know you're saying you're just doing this because there's a large project, but most of the sewer projects that have been done in town, you could look at it a different way. This is a way to get a section of town sewered with a big chunk of it coming from somebody else. That's what happened with West Main Street. We had Wheaton pay a big chunk of that to get the seed going for that.
Actually, that was the housing.
And then the housing authority paid a big chunk to go down West Main and allow those people that needed it to tie in.
I got one other thing. This is all a big maybe. No one has any official response on what's gonna happen with those 22 acres. They're trying to sweeten the deal to attract something. They've tried this before 5 or 6 times. The carrot just keeps getting bigger. And the reality is, it's like how are we gonna, what do we need to do to get somebody to move on to basically Love Canal? And what you have, the only way to do that is you have to basically eliminate those utilities so that they're not getting it from the soil themselves. When I was out talking to the EPA guys that did the work, they gave me the reports on it, which told me what we had, and I said, are you testing for this thing? They said, oh, no, they only wanted to test for certain things. So in other words, that's like, testing, doing blood work and saying, I'm only being tested for one thing. I have no idea what else is in there, but these results came back the way we wanted to come back. This is the EPA. So this is what the funding was on that. So you have a problem with that site. You have to deal with that site, and you have to do whatever you have to do to clean it up. I get it. The problem is, there's no guarantees. We could put all this in and be there for another 10 years. Now we're just paying, whatever, $12 to $15,000, $12 to $20,000. After 7 years, we've all tied in, and we're still looking at that piece of crap on the property. Because the deal's not good enough now. So it'd be nice to have that particular component in place to say, if this gets done, we have a letter of agreement and all these things will happen and it's legalese, whatever. I don't see that yet. All I see is let's offer this up and see what happens after the fact. So, again, more discussions need to be made. I'm not saying no or yes, I'm just throwing out the stuff that I've seen that I haven't seen answered yet.
So you'd rather see the agreement
I'd
already
like to see
signed
some-
with whoever's gonna do whatever.
I'd like to see
ground
something more concrete than, let's do it,
Yeah.
and then see what happens in 7 years. And if it doesn't go well, we got the other people on that tie in, we'll worry about the other stuff later. I mean, we still have a toxic site. Doesn't matter whether you take the stuff off or you cap it, whatever else, whatever goes on top of that, unless they're pouring a slab on grade with post-tension concrete, there's no way you have to dig down into the ground. Now you're gonna deal with that earth.
That's probably gonna happen regardless of what goes there, because that's
Right.
part of the remediation
Of
of
course,
the site.
right, so.
Which makes it all that much more, less enticing for someone to
I
come.
get it.
Which brings you right back to
We're trying
where
to,
you
so
are today.
you have to provide all these utilities to sweeten the deal. I get it. So there's no right answer. I'm just saying, these are all the things you need to consider when you do that,
And as we said earlier in the presentation, Paul alluded to, what's driving the schedule is the 3.5 million. because that will go away,
Yeah, good point.
you know, that will go away if we don't vote it now. Whether we can get more later is a question for another day. So that changes the whole dynamic of it.
Another thing to consider too is that, at least something that I've learned, is that pretty much everything is more expensive than it was yesterday, and less than it's gonna be tomorrow.
Yeah.
Eventually, this is gonna have to be done. In one way or another, eventually, there's gonna be a sewer line and a water upgrade in Elm Street.
Yeah, I do this for a
Something's
living,
gonna
so I
happen
know
in Green
exactly
Park.
like things.
So,
now,
you know,
yeah.
one thing you could do is
Certainly
nothing, but it just
will
sit
be
there
a lot
for
more
20 years,
if
and then
it's
what's
down
the
the
rest of
road.
that gonna be?
If it
When that
happens.
happens.
Right.
Yeah.
Those are all positives to deal with.
Is there anyone from Elm Street that wants to speak in favor, positively about
I'm
the
not,
project?
I'm not even negative, I'm just saying,
No,
let's do all of it.
I say that mostly as a joke. I mean, this is why we have these meetings. I mean,
The positive is that thing will be gone, right?
there is positive, there is positive.
Positive, yeah, that fact.
And I think you said, I mean, there's a reason we're here, there's a reason we're moving this forward.
The carrot, the 3.5 million is gonna go away. That, we have to
That's-
take the opportunity on.
That's the biggest.
That's the biggest reason.
Would it be if that money went there?
Another 3.5.
We'll add another 3.5 million onto that number, you know, and, yeah, I mean, we'd have to come up with another way at that point.
Right.
So, you know, because we, yeah. Yes, sir.
The grant itself, are there any contingencies about that? Like, I know it's related to the ability to increase housing,
Yeah.
and I know Massachusetts is in favor of that. Are there any contingencies, like certain kinds of housing? We do have a migrant crisis. I know some may be offended by me bringing it up, but they're searching for ways to take the migrants and put them in housing all around the state. Is that part of why they're giving the grant, or?
Not to my, no.
Okay, well, I gotta ask the question.
Yeah.
And I don't think that, you know, there's a contingency on what gets built. We made it clear in the application, this is still, you know, it's not definitive at this point, just as we were pointing out, and we're working with that too, so, you know, the state just wants to see that go in, but I think they also realize they're, you know, what we talked about, what was presented to us about what could go there might not be the same. So, so there's not a contingency. They're not telling us you need to do affordable, you don't have to put certain types of development in.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
So what happened after 7 years? We didn't get tied in to the main sewer line after 7 years?
After 7 years?
Yeah.
So the town has the authorization to fund.
So it's
To kind
mandatory.
of push,
Mandatory.
to
we have
push,
to
it
pay.
is mandatory within 7 years.
I see. So we have
We-
7 years to prepare the money.
Right.
To get a loss and stuff like that.
That 7 years too, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, is on the high side as far as towns around here, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's typically 2 to 5 years, the requirement. I mean, again, you know, you're investing in the infrastructure, you want it to be supported, you know, and then, you know, they need users to share in the cost of maintaining the system, those user rates. You know, if we build it and only 2 people tie in, then we're dividing all the costs by those 2 people, which is a very simplistic way of talking about it, because there's already a user base in town, but it's much less than the water user rate. So the sewer user rates are driven by how many users, you know, how many homes and properties are shared in that cost. And that's why just building it and saying it's here if you ever need it, it's not sustainable for that infrastructure. You need everybody to share in the cost of it.
Are they gonna take part of the, you said you take a part of the library area to put in the lift station?
That's what we're looking at right now, yeah, down across from the Wheaton parking lot. Yeah, at library.
Across from, okay, where the-
On Elm Street,
Yeah, but
where the
there's-
library park is. in the
Right, there's a
corner.
couple parking spaces, gravel spaces,
Yeah,
just a couple of blocks.
to the left of that.
Okay, so that's.
If you're looking at it. Yeah.
Got it. You get your-
Yes,
Ben
sir.
Ramos. So, I mean, we're dividing it between the 64 EDUs that are currently there. What happens with new houses?
So if somebody,
Like April Lane, I think has.
so
some
two things,
subdivision down there.
so
If they tie in, and they reimburse.
they
us?
have to, so they would have to pay the same assessment. They would still have to pay. So the EDUs will be recalculated at the time that the project is complete and approved for use. So anything that gets built or is in the works along the way. And that's how the number will be, the final number will be calculated. The total cost of the project divided by the total number of EDUs. So then if somebody else comes along,
If somebody builds 5 houses a year after it's completed, they didn't
it's
have to
called
raise
a
the betterment assessment.
compensatory privilege fee in the regs. So then they would have to pay. So if they put in 4 more houses, they would have to pay that betterment.
But
And it doesn't change the whole calculation.
Okay, so we're not, because if we divide it by, 70 right now versus 64, it's better for us.
Right.
So if somebody does that, we're not getting reimbursed.
No,
for
you're
that.
not. And once it happens after the fact, they still have to pay, but it doesn't change.
Where does that money actually go, just to the town?
I mean, it's still, I mean, this fee is, the rule with betterments is you can't collect more than 100% of the cost of the job. We're not close to collecting 100% of the cost of the job with these, so they can still assess people, just with the grant alone. Those are still costs of the project, if that makes sense. So they can still assess people for that.
What happens if they don't reach the 145 to 155 EDUs and it ends up being way less than expected? Well, that'll raise the rates on all of it.
It would if it were us. So keep in mind too, so in those EDUs is a vacant lot. If there's a vacant lot out there, they're getting assessed the $11,000 betterment, even if they don't have a house on it. So, and then they can come in and build the house later, they've already paid their betterment. If they come in later and build 2 houses, like build a duplex, they'd have to pay another betterment. Does that make sense? So your point about, so the EDUs they include all the properties that are out there, whether they're vacant or developed. What they don't account for is redevelopment. If somebody comes in and does a significant change to their property, that has to be addressed where it happens. So the EDUs do include the vacant lots.
Does that mean if you have a lot that is not buildable?
It has to be buildable. It has to be buildable. A buildable lot, I should have said that. If you have a vacant lot that's not buildable, it does not get assessed.
It hasn't passed the test.
If it's not buildable, it doesn't get assessed. Yes?
So I just have a quick question, so even if there's, so let's say the town approves it, it's buildable, if I was to put it in front of you guys, then you guys would do an assessment to it?
Say it again?
Then you guys would have to do an assessment to even figure out if that's something that you guys would be open to do, or to.
So let's go back to so you've got a property that has a house on it.
Correct, so.
You're gonna get assessed a betterment for that single-family home.
Not for the single family home, so I just purchased one in River Lane off of Elm Street.
Okay.
And the goal is to tear it down and to build, to do a development there, to build 4 brand new single families. So if I was to do that, so approximately, if I don't.
You would pay
without the price to tie it in, it would be approximately about 10 grand, I just came in.
So it would be a betterment for each property, for each home that you propose to build. And if you come in, that would add to these EDUs, if we know about that ahead of time. If your plans are in the planning board, so the assessment would be for however many homes you're building.
Is there a specific price that it would be approximately per home that I would have to pay, or it's not?
This range here, $8,600 to $12,000.
To 12,000.
So the approximate would be 70.
And that's not the price to tie it in or anything, that's just to bring it up to the property.
Correct.
So if you have like a really, really, really long piece of property, you have to bring that all the way to, it's gonna be way more than what you just said, like $8,000. Because you get a long property.
And I should qualify all those statements, that every property is different. The cost of the connection varies depending on the subsurface conditions, and the length is a big part of it. So yes, it is, it is a linear project, so if you're a few hundred feet back, it's more.
My neighbor is like way, way back.
And depending on how far back he is, they are, they may need a pump. Because, you know, if the sewer is at 8 feet deep, by the time you go 300 feet, you know, it has to make the grade, that's all. If the property sits up high, it's fine, but if it sits at the same elevation, it might be hard to get.
And that grade will be like a quarter of an inch per foot?
Yeah.
or-
Yeah. Yes, sir.
So you mentioned about the 7-year time period that in some other areas it's 2 to 5 years.
Some other towns.
Some other towns.
So this
Oh,
town.
So Norton is 7
so
years.
Norton
That's not
was-
changing.
Norton was 2 years, and then town meeting voted to change it to 5 years, and then they voted to change it to 7 years.
Okay.
It's been a hotly contested
Yeah.
issue, as has been discussed tonight. You know, people have pushed it out, you know.
But if you wait the 7 years, you keep paying interest and, no? There's no additional fee of that?
So you're still paying the betterment.
So there's no additional fee? You can wait 7 years and still pay that in 6 years, is that what you're saying?
What she's saying is, let's say right now we have to pay $8,000 to connect in as you come through.
Yeah.
I wait 7 years, it's still $8,000 7 years later?
Oh, yeah, so you're at the mercy of the construction prices, yes.
No, your thing. Let's
No.
say
All
you're.
right, let me
7
take a
years.
step back,
Yeah,
okay?
yeah,
So the betterment,
yeah.
Yeah,
we'll
exactly.
call it my thing,
Your
even though it's
thing.
not really my thing. But, so my thing ranges from 8,600 to 12,000. When the sewer is put in the ground and approved for use, you'll get a letter that says, you can tie in now, and you are assessed a betterment. Whether you tie in or not, you get a bill for $11,000. And if you don't pay it within 30 days, it just automatically goes to your taxes
Oh,
and gets paid so at the lower end, it's like $690 a year for 20 years.
so,
So the 7 years is for you to tie in your house into
Right.
that?
So, yeah, so then the 7-year time frame is,
Okay.
so you don't have to
But you
hire
will
a
get
contractor
charged
right
30
away
days
to tie
after that
in.
goes
So the
off.
other costs, that-
Yeah. And that taxes gets charged to your house?
say it again?
Tax bill,
Yeah, it goes right on your tax bill, yeah.
But that's the 8.6, right? That's the betterment, that's on the low end.
Yeah, that's, yeah, to be 12, yeah.
Right, and that is, if you decide to defer it and pay it over the whatever, right, now you have 5% per year for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the interest, yeah. So like I said, this is, if you do a portion over time and you want to look at an annual cost, this was, help me again, $690 per year and $960 per year is the range.
When 5% is,
And that's at 5%.
It was 3-4 years ago, the interest rate was 2.5.
Yes. Yep.
So now it's up at 7.
Yep.
So if you have a 3-family, you will assess a 3-bedroom.
3-family, yes. 3-bedroom.
It's not fair. So when you guys bring it up to the property, it's up to me if I wanna, to use you guys to tie it in, or I can go ahead and.
You hire, so the town has a list of approved licensed installers.
Contractors with the town
Yep.
to tie it in.
Yep.
So typically to get bonded with the town is about, what fee, and there's some referrals, right? That they need to have, do the same, so.
There's no, so if you pay the betterment, there's no tie-in fee, so there's no
Okay, so.
fee. So you have to pay, so you find a contractor and you pay the contractor, and that's what we're saying, the average, I just have, current average price to tie in a home that's at a normal distance from the road, is about $7,000.
So let's say, since it's on Elm Street.
Yeah, no, I don't know how to define normal.
I mean, you guys would probably only break it up to Elm Street.
So we run the sewer, so we run a main line down the road. There's a whole process. We issue what are called building connection forms to all the properties along the way to give you the opportunity to have some input on where you would want the stub left. So then we run a stub, we put a Y branch or a T branch in the main line sewer and run a 6-inch stub all the way to your property line where it's most advantageous for you to connect that property in the future.
Gotcha, and the reason why I'm asking is because we're, no, you're right. And the reason why I'm asking is because we're working on a subdivision on there.
Yeah.
So, it was soon enough.
So
for
with,
going through the
and
south.
if you have information on it, we will leave multiple stubs
Okay,
for the properties.
yeah, that was gonna be my next one. That's
So you guys will bring it into the property,
Yep.
not on the street.
We'll bring it well outside of the pavement, outside of the town's right of way. So there's the limit of the pavement, and then the town usually owns 5 to 10 more feet beyond the pavement. So the intent is to bring the stub to the property. Right, so we don't want you touching the pavement when you go to tie in. Nobody is supposed to have to go back into the pavement.
Do you have that map? Is that on the website of Water and Sewer?
We will put it there.
Thank you. And anything.
We'll put it there, right?
Yep.
All right. Yes?
Did I understand you that if you didn't want the sewer to come to your house, it didn't have to? Because I'm at the dead end. Could I say, I don't want it, don't bring it this far? There's nothing beyond me except town property.
No, I didn't say that. So the sewer is fronting all the properties on Elm Street. Are you on the Main Street side? Oh, you're on Military.
Yes, I'm the last house on the dead end. What if I say, I don't want it?
You have a choice.
I mean, the intent is to sewer everybody. Yeah, we're not picking and choosing where we end the line. That could go on forever.
I got a question. You mentioned you have contractors to do your private work from your house to the edge of the street.
Yeah.
The homeowner can do that himself, right?
He has to get a permit through the town. So it's
Because I'm not
gonna be,
gonna be paying somebody to dig that trench. I got a machine, I can dig the trench and I can run the pipe.
so you would have to pull the permit
Yeah,
yourself
I
with the
understand
town.
that, yeah. I
If you
have to
you
follow
have to
the
get
rules.
bonding,
But does a
yeah.
homeowner can pull
But
the
you
permit?
you can pull a permit, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
Brooke, I'm not, if he meets the qualifications, he
Dig safe, bonded, insurance,
Well,
all that stuff.
it's my
has to
own
be-
home anyway, but still.
But what I'm saying,
Yeah.
yeah, if the
No,
town
I'm
doesn't
just
want the
asking you because,
liability.
you know, the next thing is you're gonna force a private contractor to do it because
But
of
what-
that.
but if you pull up the pressurized gas main, hey, it's my own property. No, I'm sorry, they're not gonna.
No, I understand all
they
that,
want
that's
the
why we
insurance
call
property.
dig safe and do all that, but still, yeah.
Right.
If you get bonded, you can pass your business card around everybody in the room. He's your guy.
How about Dig Safe do, they pop the main from the house?
But it's gonna be voted yes first.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
I'm still a little confused.
okay.
For the betterment, that means it's a additional money for constructing the.
So constructing the main
Main
line,
line.
yeah.
And that was paid by the property tax every year for 20, right? For 20 years.
Yep, if you apportion, yeah, if you don't pay
And the
enough.
connection will be paid by each unit,
Each,
person.
each property owner has to
And we need to hire.
hire
our-
some
hire
contract. Yeah, there's a
our-
process, the water and sewer department will help you through that, but yes,
And will they recommend a contractor or?
they have a whole list, they'll make
Oh, yes.
recommendations on,
Okay, and we need to pull out a permit as well.
yep, and they have a list of people that
And we need
that are
to.
qualified,
like,
licensed.
Draw drawings and get reviewed and.
There's no requirement for like an engineered plan, it's pretty straightforward at this point. That's why it has to be a licensed contractor, they understand the lines and grades that they need to meet, they know there's just rules and regulations.
That's the thing.
Steve, quick question about the betterments. Might be more a question from maybe Mike if he's still here. But it might help people decide whether or not they want to portion it out or pay up front. If someone decides to portion it to their taxes for 20 years, and then say 2 or 3 years down the road, that was a mistake, I should have just paid it all. Is it locked into the taxes at that point, or at that point can they come in and pay off the rest of the principal of that part of it?
They can pay it.
They can
Pay it. You can pay it.
So you can let it go on your taxes, and in a
I'm
few
pretty
years,
sure you
oh,
can.
oh, boy, I don't want to have that locked in, that 5%.
If I'm wrong, I'll have to clarify that, but yeah, I don't see any reason you can't at any time come in and pay it. And it gets paid at the sale of a property, so the lien has to get cleared if a property is sold. It's cleared as part of the sale of the property. It doesn't, you can't sell the property with the lien.
Right.
So I had more slides, but this was the big one, I think. There's not, I'll go through these other few slides. This is just about the steps from here, so go ahead, Ian. So we talked about the pump station siting options. We're looking at this point, at Library Park, force main routing. we've done soil borings out there, you've probably seen in the neighborhoods out there, so we have the data. I bring these up because these are probably three of the bigger things that drive the cost of the project. You know, where you put the pump station, how deep is it, how long is your force main route, and what's the digging like. So we've got solid data on that information that goes into the calculations that have been provided. Next slide. All right, so next step, we're finalizing the design and the permits. We're at the green right now, public outreach. So under the grant that we have for the design, we have to close out the design by the end of the fiscal year, which we're in a position to do. So we're going to have the plans and specs ready at the end of the fiscal year, so the end of June. And then, so there's your town. So if we were to get town meeting authorization, we'd have the design complete. We would be looking to bid it over the summer and start in the fall. And it would be about a year from when we break ground until we're done. So if that's a tentative schedule, depending on how the next few weeks go, and where we're headed from here.
You guys will be starting right at the top of Elm Street?
I mean, we will,
down, or-
no, so typically for the sewer, they'll start at the low point. They start at the pump station and they build the sewer uphill. So they would build it from the pump station up. The water main, they'll start at either end and just go from one end to the other, because the water main doesn't have to meet a line and grade. So I don't know for sure, we don't dictate exactly where they start and finish, but that's generally how it would happen. And then the pump station, they typically do simultaneously. They'll get somebody working at the pump station while they're putting the pipeline in.
And it would typically take about a year, you said, right?
That's the time frame we're estimating for this project.
You said that some houses might need a pump, depending on whatever, when would we know which houses need a pump if our house needs it?
I think when
How would we find out?
So when we do the building connection forms, we find out the elevation of your plumbing. There's a questionnaire that you fill out, and then we figure out how deep it would need to then be in the road. But we should be good for most properties. It's just, again, I wouldn't be worried about it unless you drive up, up your driveway to get to the uphill to get to the road. If you're down in a gully, we can look at it.
Yeah, it's not that, we have a 450-foot driveway, so.
So it's the length, yeah, it's the length, okay. Yes?
It goes up to the house,
When I
but
saw the slideshow at the water department meeting, I saw it online, you at that point were pointing to the Land Preservation Society property as the probable location. What's changed and brought it up to the library? We like the library, by the way, as a location.
Yeah, so the Land Preservation Society decided they weren't interested in working with that. It didn't work for them. Initially, we were having discussions with them, and then finally so at this point, they're not amenable to that location.
Okay, has there been any tests between now and then? I mean, might it change from the library location? I guess that's my real question.
It could, yeah. I mean, it does, it seems like that's the site we're at, but we've still got some work to do to
you're looking at
confirm.
the spot right between the little parking lot down on Elm and the next street, or where is it exactly?
So yeah, you got Miller Terrace, and then there's the one property from Miller Terrace, and then the Library Park property starts. So it's really,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a little driveway at the Library Park. It's to the left of that, is where we're thinking.
Yep.
It's not, so the land preservation land is adjacent to Miller Terrace.
Yeah.
It's at the lowest point in the road. We wanted to put it there, because that's ideally the best place. So it's gonna be, there's a little more cost with putting the pump station here, because it has to be deeper. Because we come through the low point, and then we gotta keep going downhill, and the road's going up. It's not hugely deep, but everything affects it. So that's, we've looked at several sites, and this is where we're at. So there's another meeting scheduled in 2 weeks.
The 8th, I believe.
It's basically the same information. We might tweak a little of this, but just for either people who want to come again, or it was for people that couldn't make this one. So however you want to work with that.
May 13th.
Are there any other questions? Well, thank you for coming. Hopefully it was a productive discussion. All right.
You guys are bone.
Wednesday, May
You guys
8th.
are bone.